The clean and jerk is one of the most impressive lifts that anyone can do in the gym. If you have a big clean and jerk, you're strong, you're fast, you're flexible, and most importantly, you have grit. Over the last 10 years, I've taught thousands of lifters the clean and jerk, everyone from pure beginners to international level weightlifters. And in today's video, I'm gonna give you my top 9 lifts for increasing your clean and jerk. And if you stay towards the end of the video, I'll teach you exactly how I use these lifts in my training programs to help lifters set PRs consistently. In part 1, we're going to talk about lifts that will improve your technique in the clean or jerk. In part 2, we'll focus on lifts that will increase your strength for the clean and jerk. And in part 3, we'll cover lifts that will add training volume with the clean and jerk so that you can set PRs. All of these lifts could increase your clean and jerk. Training generally will do that. But make sure to choose the variations or the lifts that actually address your specific weaknesses, not just the ones that you want to do. Nobody's gonna wanna do lift number 9 that I'm gonna talk about, but some people really need to. Remember, if you're trying to get strong, do what you need to do, not necessarily what you want to do. Now, if you've never done the clean and jerk before, then this is probably not the place to start. I'd rather you go check out my free Weightlifting 101 beginner guide and 6-week program. It's gonna teach you everything that you need to know to learn the snatch, the clean, and the jerk for free. You can find that linked down in the description below. The most important factor when it comes to increasing your clean and jerk is improving your technique. This may sound like an obvious statement, but you'd be surprised how many people would agree with me and then not actually put it into practice in their training, especially if you're a beginner. Any small change that you make could add 5 to 10 pounds worth of progress. And if you stack up 5 to 10 of these changes, you can make a lot of progress really quickly. Even with seemingly small technique changes like a small change in your hip position in the start, or a small change in the direction that your elbows point in the jerk. Each of these changes could be the difference between where you are now and your next PR. With that being said, here are my 3 favorite lifts for improving your technique in the clean and jerk. That first lift is focused on improving your technique in the clean, specifically learning how to create vertical leg drive and speed under the bar. And it's the first lift that I teach beginners when learning the clean in Weightlifting 101, and that is the hip clean or power position clean. To perform the hip clean, first pull the bar up to your hip crease. From here, make sure that your feet are directly under your hips, slightly wider is okay, and make sure to turn your toes out just a little bit. Then we're going to bend our knees with our shoulders directly on top of the bar and the bar resting somewhere around the upper thigh. For those of you guys with shorter arms, that may be in the hip crease. For those of you guys with longer arms, that may be in the mid-thigh position. All of this is okay. This dip position is called the power position because it's where all of our power comes from. It is going to help us use our legs to launch the bar up, and then from there, we'll use our arms to move our body down. That looks like this. Now, the biggest key to this variation is using vertical leg drive. In this position, we have 2 directions we could go. We could go forward with our hips, or we could go up with our legs. If you use hip drive, you'll push the bar away from the body, and any forward movement of the bar away from the body, especially if it's excessive, is going to lead to a less efficient lift. That's why it's important to make sure that you're focusing on vertical leg drive and keeping the bar close to the body. Try this variation out for 3 to 5 sets of 1 to 3 reps. If you're a pure beginner and you're learning the clean for the first time, then stick with an empty barbell or very light weight. If you're a little bit more experienced, but you need to be working on your technique, then stick with the 65 to 85% range. Now, the second lift to increase your clean and jerk is also going to focus on improving your technique in the clean. Specifically, it's about mastering your pull from the floor to reach that power position that we worked on in the hip clean. It's also my absolute favorite variation of the clean, hands down, and it's one of the progressions in Weightlifting 101, and that is the tempo clean. To perform the tempo clean, you'll set up as you would normally for a clean, with your feet just under your hips and your toes turned out slightly. You'll grab the bar with your hands just outside of knee width. We should not have our grip so narrow that we're pushing our knees in. Your hips should be about level with your knees, maybe slightly lower for some, maybe slightly higher for others. But most importantly, we should have mid-foot balance and our armpits directly on top of the bar. This point right here, directly on top of the bar. From here, we'll take 4 seconds to move from the ground to the power position before finishing the rest of the lift as fast as possible. This slower pull allows you to take the time to focus on things like maintaining that mid-foot balance that we talked about in our start position, especially as we pass the knee. A lot of people will let their balance shift back onto the heels and their toes lift up, and then they'll compensate back forward and push the bar away. With the slower pull, you get all the time that you need to practice your specific technique breakdowns. You can try these out either as a main lift for 3 to 5 sets of 1 to 3 reps, or my personal favorite way to use it for more experienced lifters is as a movement primer, where you're taking tempo cleans for up to about 50, maybe 60% as you're warming up to your working weights for the day. Then you just do normal clean and jerks after that. The final lift to improve your technique in the clean and jerk is focused on the jerk, and there's no better lift to do this than the pause jerk. My personal favorite way to use this is as a complex, which is what we're going to do today. That is a pause jerk followed by a regular jerk, where you're taking all of the things that you practiced and corrected in the pause jerk and applying them into the regular jerk. I found this method to be particularly helpful because oftentimes I would find a variation that allowed me to fix a lifter's technique. It was great, and then when we tried the normal version of the lift, a lot of those technique changes wouldn't carry over, or they wouldn't carry over as well. So when you perform a technique variation like this, try doing it in a complex so that you can mentally take what you practiced with the variation that helped you learn that specific technique into the normal lift. Now for this, start like you would for a normal jerk, with the bar on the front rack position, a full grip if you can do it, and your elbows in front of the bar. They don't necessarily need to be front squat position, they just need to be in front of the bar. You should have a nice tall posture, not a slouch posture. Take a big deep breath in and brace your core. From here, we're going to dip. At the bottom of this dip, we should have a completely vertical torso, the knees pointing out in line with the toes, and our core still braced. From here, we'll drive up, land in your split position with vertical front shin, bent back knee, and the back heel off the ground before you recover. Now, if you do this dip for the pause jerk and you find that you have a lean forward or a collapsed core, or your knees are caved in, take the time to correct those positions before you move into the rest of the movement. Same if you end up in your split position. Maybe your foot's a little short and you're leaning forward onto that front leg, or maybe your back leg is super straight, or your split is short and your back leg is straight. Fix those issues, hold that position, and then recover the movement. Pausing can be a great tool to identify your technique issues, but if you don't take the time to correct those issues while you're in the pause, you're just making the movement harder and not getting the benefits from it. Now remember, after you finish the paused rep, we're going to lower that bar down. Let's say that you leaned forward. We're gonna cue ourselves chest up or straight up and down to help you remind yourself of what you need to work on for the regular jerk. We're gonna make that change in the normal one. Still pausing that split, it's just a generally good thing to do. And then recover. Try this complex of 1 pause jerk plus 1 regular jerk for 3 to 5 sets of the complex, anywhere from 60 all the way up to, I've seen athletes do it at 90+% of their max jerk. For beginners, stick with an empty barbell or very light weight on the bar. Only weight that you can do without leaning forward or having any other technique errors happen. For more advanced athletes, this stays the same, but you have a little bit more leeway with the weight that you use, where you can still make technique changes to it, but it might be challenging to do so. That's kind of your sweet spot for improving your technique with meaningful weights. A lot of people may not know this, but technique work doesn't mean that it has to be an empty barbell or very lightweight. It's relative to your strength level. So for a beginner, technique work is an empty barbell or maybe a PVC pipe or very lightweight on the bar. But for a more advanced athlete, technique work may be in the 70 to 80 to 85% range. It's got to be challenging enough for you to have to do it right, and also challenging enough to make it hard to do it right, but still able to do it sometimes. Then over time, you just take that sometimes and turn it into most times. and then take that most times and turn it into every time, and then your weights go up. Now, if your technique is pretty consistent and you don't have any glaring issues, then the next area that you likely need to focus on is your strength levels. You'll never be able to clean and jerk 200 pounds if you don't squat 200 pounds, even if you have the best technique in the world. To get a big clean and jerk, you need to have decent levels of squatting, pulling, and pressing strength. But it's important to choose exercises that are specific to the clean and jerk. Having a strong low bar squat doesn't carry over as much as having a strong front squat would, same as having a strong bench press compared to a strong push press. Increasing your strength in these 3 lifts, even by 5 to 10 pounds, especially if you're limited by strength, could be exactly what you need to set a PR on your next clean and jerk. And that first lift that every weightlifter should be doing if you want to get a big clean and jerk is the front squat. To perform the front squat, first set up in the front rack position. Push your shoulders forward, lift the elbows up, and let the bar roll back onto the fingertips so you can get your elbows as high as possible. Make sure that your feet are just slightly outside of hip width with the toes turned out to a natural degree. Then sit straight down into the bottom of the squat, getting as low as you possibly can while maintaining mid-foot balance and upright posture and your elbows as high as you can get them. Fairly simple, right? But it's important to train your front squat to the same depth that you will receive a max effort clean, which is at the lowest possible depth. Where a lot of people, when they're training their front squats, especially with heavy ones, they may stop just below parallel and stand up and then ask, oh, did I hit depth? It doesn't matter if you hit depth or not. We want to see if you hit the maximum level of depth. So if you struggle with that, you can do this drill with the front squat or with the back squat. We're going to do what's called a double pause squat. So if you struggle with depth, we're going to hit your normal level of depth. Hold this for 3 seconds, then inch a little bit lower. Hold this position for 3 seconds and then stand up. Now the reason that this works is that it's easier to make a small change to a new range of motion than it is to try and do that from the beginning of the movement. So if you struggle with your depth, try that out for 3 to 5 sets of 3 to 5 reps, each with a 3-second pause at your normal stopping point and then your lower stopping point. Use weights for this that are challenging, but not so challenging that they would be tough for a normal squat workout. With the double pause, it is significantly harder. Now, most people only need to train the front squat 1 time a week, especially if you're doing the back squat on a second day of the week, like we do in my 12-week squat program. But if you're particularly limited by your front squat and you have a big back squat, that front squat's nowhere close to it, then you can front squat twice a week using something like the Texas method, where you'll have 1 day that's focused on volume and lighter weight, higher reps, and then another day that's focused on heavier weight and less reps. Something like 5x5 on Tuesday, and then a heavy set of 5 on Saturday. Now, I know that I said I would talk about programming at the end, but here's a little bit of a sneak peek. This works really well on a 4-day weightlifting split, where you're going to do your higher volume snatches and clean and jerks on Monday, and then your higher volume squats on Tuesday. Then, later in the week, on Friday, you'll do your heavy snatch and clean and jerk, and on Saturday, your heavy squats. Give that training split a try. Now, you can have a great front squat and still have a terrible clean, especially if your back is weak. And that's why it's so important to do this next exercise at least once a week, and that is the clean pull. To perform the clean pull, set up like you would for a normal clean, but the only difference being that we don't attempt to get under it. Now, there's many different types of clean pulls. There's clean deadlifts, clean pulls, clean high pulls, but I'm of the opinion that all clean pulls are clean high pulls, and the weight that's on the bar dictates how high that bar gets. All of these options have a place in your training program depending on the phase of training that you're in. But a good general rule of thumb is to do your clean pulls for 3 to 5 sets of 2 to 5 reps with anywhere from 10 to 20 pounds heavier than your last clean for that workout. Now, having strong legs is obviously so important for getting a big clean and jerk, but you also need to have a strong and powerful upper body. And there's no better exercise for increasing upper body strength and power than the push press. To perform the push press, set up exactly like you would for a jerk, with the elbows in the same position, the feet in the same position, and your abs braced nice and tall. Take a big deep breath in, then dip and drive. launching the bar overhead, using the arms to finish the movement at the top. Make sure that when you do these, that you use all of the key points that we talked about for a good dip and drive in the jerk. Making sure that our torso stays completely straight up and down, our knees point out in line with our toes, and our core is braced and our posture is tall. Now, the push press is not a normal strength exercise like a squat, which will build strength and muscle at the same time. If that's what you need, then the strict press might be a better option for you. But the push press is going to build upper body strength that carries over to the jerk because we're going to use the same dip and drive where we're using our legs to get the bar moving and then our upper body will finish the lockout. I recommend keeping these in the 1 to 5 rep range, both for your heavy sets and for your lighter volume work. Or if you need to build a little bit more muscle, you can work up to a heavy top set of 1 to 5 reps with the push press and then perform your drop sets in the 5 to 10 rep range with the strict press. Once your technique and strength levels are good, the next step is to increase the amount of training volume of the clean and jerks so that you can get more practice with the movements, allow your body to adapt to both the weight on the bar and the technique that you continue to improve over time, and start moving the needle forward. There are many ways to increase the training volume of clean and jerks, such as adding more sets or increasing the amount of days a week that you practice the movement. The next 3 lifts are my favorite variations to add more training volume to your clean and jerk without needing to train more often. With all of these variations, I recommend picking one as an anchor lift, trying to beat your top set for that variation every week by 5 to 10 pounds for 4 weeks before you retest your clean and jerk. The first complex is designed to increase your training volume in the clean, help you practice making heavy jerks under fatigue, and most importantly, build grit. And that is why I call this complex the grit complex. The grit complex is simple. It's 2 cleans followed by 1 jerk. When I first started weightlifting under Coach Penley, this was one of his favorite lifts on the program. I distinctly remember one week where we had it not once, not twice, but 3 times in a week. And you can imagine my dismay if you've ever done this complex, seeing it for the 3rd time that week. But it also helped me break through the 225-pound clean and jerk mark, which as a beginner was a pretty huge moment for me. The grit complex is fairly simple, but one thing I want to clarify here. After the first clean, you should not be doing a touch and go clean like CrossFitters do. Instead, I want you to drop it from the top. Reset each time so that you have a consistent starting position. Then, with all this fatigue in your legs, especially if you're doing heavy cleans, it's going to be hard to make this jerk, but if you've got the grit for it, you can do it. This complex can be done either as a variation where you're doing more training volume, maybe 5 sets of that complex, 10 sets of that complex, between 60 and 85% of your 1 rep max clean and jerk. Now, my favorite way to use this complex is as an anchor lift, where this is my sole focus for 4 weeks. I'm trying to increase my max on this lift for 4 weeks by 5 to 10 pounds every week before retesting my clean and jerk. And if you have a leg strength or clean limited clean and jerk, more than likely by the end of it, you'll be able to set a PR pretty easily. More advanced athletes, it may take a little bit longer to see those results, but for beginners, you can get a lot out of this complex. The second complex is designed to increase your training volume in the jerk, get faster under the barbell each time, and make heavy jerks under fatigue. It's also proved for me to be one of the easiest ways to increase your clean and jerk for jerk limited weightlifters. And that complex is the 1 clean plus 2 jerks complex. Now, don't get me wrong, this clean and jerk complex does require grit just as much as the grit complex does, especially if you're a bit of a pansy with re-racking heavy jerks. I know that it feels like your soul is leaving your body every time, but it is good for you. Now, one method that you can use to make this re-rack a little bit easier is to first bend the knees, then jump to meet the bar, then absorb. This works really well because the bar has less distance to travel where it can pick up speed, which is what makes that re-rack so challenging. Now, I know that that re-rack might be a little too much technique for all you meatheads, but just give it a couple tries before you knock it. The final lift, which I would only reserve for my worst enemies or for people who really suck at clean and jerks, is the 3 cleans plus 3 jerks complex. This is great for lifters who still need to improve their technique, and that's a main focus for them, but are also at a stage where they can increase the amount of training volume to help them do so. The reason I like this complex so much is because you only have to think about one movement at a time. So if you do a clean and jerk double and you need to improve something in your clean, you can't think about it after the clean because you still have the jerk to do. But if you do the 3 cleans plus 3 jerks complex, you can do the first clean, be like, oh, I need to get my knees out of the way a little bit more, and immediately put that into place on the next clean, and then do that again for that 3rd clean. Same thing for the jerks here. You'll do your first jerk and be like, oh, I need to step out a little further. Cue that in your mind for the 2nd and 3rd jerk. So again, this works really well for lifters who have one technique issue in the clean and maybe one technique issue in the jerk that they need to work on, where it gives you the time to practice it and put it into focus on the clean before you're done with that movement and you can put it into focus on the jerk. We've covered my top 9 lifts for increasing your clean and jerk. Let's talk about how you can use them in your training programs like I do. In the second section of this video, we talked about building strength. And in all of my programs, we're never not focused on building strength in some way. That's because it takes months and years to develop strength. So we can't really afford to not be focusing on it consistently all the time. Because of that, I always have the 3 lifts that we talked about for strength building: the front squat, the push press, and the clean pull in all of my training programs, along with other barbell basic strength exercises like the back squat, the snatch pull, the overhead squat, and the strict press. Now, for the front squat, back squat, push press, and strict press, I usually follow the 12-week progression in my squat program. And I can't give you the details on it. If you want it, go pay the $29, get the program linked in the description below. But here's a sample program that you can use that's a little bit better for maintaining or making small increases to your strength without the fatigue of retesting your 1 rep max. It's an 8-week program that has 4 weeks focused on the pause front squat and pause back squat, where you're going to work up to a top set of 5, then drop down to about 10 to 15% less for 4 sets of 5. Each week for the first 4 weeks, you'll try and add 5 to 10 pounds to both the top set and drop set for the pause front squat and pause back squat. Then for the second 4 weeks, we'll follow the exact same progression, still increasing weight from where we started at week 4, but with a regular front squat and back squat, no pauses. This approach has helped a ton of my lifters increase their strength levels and see a direct increase in their clean and jerk, especially without needing to retest the squat. So give that a try. In the first part of the video, we talked about improving technique in the clean and jerk. And just like strength, this is something that we're never not doing. There's a few different ways to incorporate technique work into your training program. First is to use the 2-day-a-week clean and jerk split, where on Monday you're going to do less weight, more reps, and on Friday you're going to do more weight, less reps. And on Friday, you're going to find what technique errors break down at those top end weights, make note of them, and then you're going to work on them on the following Monday. Another way that you can incorporate technique work into your training program is to use some of these variations as a movement primer. I talked about this a little bit in the tempo clean, but if you want to improve your technique on your working sets for the day without adding any extra days of training or adding any extra sets, you can just do your normal workout. But for the first portion of it, up to 50%, perform the tempo clean if you're working on your pull for the clean. Or maybe you can do the hip clean plus a clean and jerk to work on your vertical leg drive. This is a great way to sneak in extra technique work without having to change your training program too much. Another way that you could incorporate more technique work into your training is doing it how we do it on the OlyStrong 5-day weightlifting program. I've talked about it a little bit already, but on Mondays we're going to do our highest volume Olympic lifts. Then on Tuesdays we're going to do strength work. But before that strength work, I like to add one of these lighter variations or drills as a bit of a warm-up before the strength movement. For example, if I'm doing front squats on Tuesday, then I can do something like a tempo clean or a tall clean to work on my technique, and it's going to get me warm for the movement. Then you could do the same thing on Saturdays. Let's say you've got push presses as your main strength exercise, then your first movement primer or drill that is going to help you work on your technique could be the tall jerk. It's going to be a great warm-up for your push presses. Your shoulders are going to get nice and loose, but it's not going to be overly fatiguing and prevent you from being able to do your actual working weights for the push press. Here's how I like to incorporate the training volume increases into a 12-week training split. If you're limited by your clean in the clean and jerk, then you could do the 2 cleans, 1 jerk. But if we're 12 weeks out from a retest, we could actually do 3 cleans and 1 jerk for the first 4 weeks as an anchor lift. Then for the second 4, do 2 cleans, 1 jerk. And for the final 4 weeks, we'll do just normal clean and jerks. And each week across the whole 12 weeks, try and increase by 5 to 10 pounds. And by the end of it, you should be able to hit a pretty big clean and jerk. Especially if you train, eat, and sleep consistently, you should be able to see PRs consistently as well. If you found this video helpful and you want to increase your clean and jerk, then make sure to check out my OlyStrong weightlifting program. We've got a 3-day and 5-day week option that all include daily video feedback, unlimited coach messaging for all of your questions, including the dumb ones, and video demonstrations of every lift so you never feel like you're not knowing what you're supposed to do. Click the link in the description below for a free week trial today. That's everything for this video. We'll catch you guys on the next one.